If your files and folders are a jumbled mess, or if it takes you forever to find the document you're looking for, or if you maintain documents, email, and notes in several disjointed separate systems, then you need a document management system. I'm Dennis Dimka with Uptime Legal, and today I'm going to show you how to find the best document management software for your law firm. Now, before we talk about specific products, I think we need to define document management software. The term is used sort of liberally, so let's define what that means. I like to summarize document management software, or a document management system, or a DMS, as software that fundamentally does two things. One, it stores your documents and data for your law firm. Your data lives in the DMS. And two, it provides tools to organize and manage those documents, and usually email as well. And that second part, that number two, is really the important part. That's what makes a DMS, and that's what separates a true document management system from just a general, simple file system. So here are those features. These are the core features of a DMS, and I'll briefly touch on each. Not an exclusive list, but these are the things that you would really expect to see in most DMS products. Starting with, again, document and file storage. That is to say, documents live in the DMS. Also, most DMS products have some kind of Microsoft Office integration. That includes Word, Excel, Outlook, things like that. A big piece of a DMS is document profiling, it's sometimes called, also referred to sometimes as document metadata. And that's the ability to code and classify and categorize documents that you save in your DMS. Full text search is another feature you would expect to see, which is the ability to search not just documents and items by name, but by the content, search within the content of documents. Unique document ID is another one. That is where every document that you save into your DMS gets a unique ID that never changes. Think of it as like a serial number or like a social security number for that document. And the idea is, even if the document is moved, if you rename the document, if you change it a lot, significantly, that ID is the one thing that never changes. Another feature that you'll typically find in DMSs is document checkout and check-in. That gives users in your firm the ability to check a document out for a period of time, effectively locking it so other users can't edit it for some period of time. Version management is another feature. That gives you, and every DMS does versioning a little different, but that generally gives you the ability to see previous versions of a document. What did this look like on this date or several versions ago? And depending on the product, you can also see kind of a history of who did what when to each document. Email management and Outlook integration is another feature you'll see. That usually gives you the ability to save an email to a matter, in the case of a legal DMS, much the same way you would a document. And that's typically done via an Outlook add-in. Permissions and access management, which is simply the ability to grant or deny access to, say, a certain matter or certain sets of documents to specific users within your firm. And then finally, client portal or external sharing. Some DMSs, this is the feature that I would say fewer products have this built in natively, but some DMS products give you the ability to securely share documents with outside parties. So that might be a client, that might be another attorney outside of your firm. So these are the core features of a DMS. You really have to have most of these, in my opinion, to be called a DMS. And this is what you would expect to see in most legal DMS products. Okay, now that we've defined document management software, let's evaluate what are really the top document management products for law firms today. And these products that you see on screen right now, these really are the top 6, and you could really argue they're the only 6, or that is to say that collectively they represent the vast majority of the install base of document management software across law firms in North America. So I'll provide something of an overview for each one to give you guys something to dig into as you're evaluating options. And for each of these products, I'll try to provide highlights, advantages of each particular product, trade-offs of each particular product, and I'll try my best to wrap it up with some final takeaways or bottom lines for each product. So let's dive in. Starting with Microsoft SharePoint. Now, SharePoint is Microsoft's own product, and it is their lightweight DMS mixed with an intranet platform, kind of a hybrid of those two systems. SharePoint is part of the Office 365 suite, and it's not a legal document management system per se, but it is used for that purpose by quite a few number of law firms. So I think it definitely should be in this list and might be worth your consideration. So Microsoft SharePoint, let's start with advantages. The advantages of Microsoft SharePoint include, number one, it is relatively low cost. SharePoint is included in most of the various levels of Office 365. Of course, if you're familiar with 365, there's a variety of levels and it changes fairly frequently, but many or most of the additions come with it built in, so pretty low cost. SharePoint is also highly customizable. You can create and structure libraries, as they call it in SharePoint, which is where documents go, and lists, which is something like custom tables, really any way you like. And it does have that intranet-like structure, so you can create custom pages, custom wikis, and really make it, fine-tune it to the way your law firm works, or that you want it to work. And I think the last advantage that I'll mention, anyway, of SharePoint is that it's widely supported or well supported. Lots of IT companies and lots of IT consultants either specialize in SharePoint or they're familiar with it, they're comfortable with it. So you shouldn't have a difficult time setting up and getting support for SharePoint. But what are the trade-offs? There are a few. Number one, SharePoint it definitely requires specific expertise both to implement and to support it going forward. SharePoint itself it's a bit of a raw element, I like to say. It's not particularly useful out of the box, especially for law firms. Again, it can be used by law firms, but it's not made for law firms. So for instance, there's no concept of clients and matters. There's literally no such thing in SharePoint unless you unless you engineer it that way. So you'll need to hire somebody who can do that for you, somebody who has experience with SharePoint, of course, and ideally somebody who also has experience with law firms and understand the way a law office runs. So another trade-off, I would say, with SharePoint is that it has limited functionality outside of Office documents. So here's what I mean. SharePoint's by Microsoft, Office is by Microsoft, so it's probably no surprise to know that those two work really well together. For instance, if you have a Word doc in SharePoint, you can click on it, open it, make a change, hit save, and you're done. Really smooth, very simple. But outside or beyond Office documents is where things are a little less smooth. Most notably, where law firms run into this issue is PDFs. With a PDF, the way it works is when you store a PDF in SharePoint, you click on it, you maybe make a change and you hit save. You still have to manually re-upload that document back to SharePoint, usually via drag and drop, each and every time you edit it. So great integration with Office docs, but it ends there. And for a lot of law firms who are very heavy PDF users, that's a big deal. So that's SharePoint. I would say the bottom line takeaway is SharePoint is good if you want something really customizable, and should be worth consideration if you're looking for both a DMS and something of an intranet for your law firm. Okay, next let's look at our own LexWorkplace. So LexWorkplace is cloud-based document and email management made just for law firms. And I like to describe LexWorkplace as having the simplicity of modern web-based software with the capabilities and the features and functions of a robust DMS. So let's start with advantages. So one of the biggest advantages, according to customers of LexWorkplace, is its very powerful and very fast search engine. So LexWorkplace has full text search for both documents and email and also notes, which means you can search everything. You can search across your entire database, which might be millions of documents, terabytes of data, and find what you're looking for almost instantly. And again, that applies to documents, email, and notes. And you can also refine your search and get a little bit more precise with your search. You can search by things like just within certain matters or just for certain clients, or you can search just for certain document types, like maybe you just want to search documents that have been classified as contracts, things like that. Another advantage of LexWorkplace is that it has 100% native support for both Windows and Mac OS. So that is to say LexWorkplace and all of LexWorkplace works natively on a Mac. No parallels required, no dual booting required. And again, that applies to the entire application. And as of right now, anyway, LexWorkplace is the only legal DMS that truly works natively on Windows and Mac. The third advantage of LexWorkplace that I'll mention has a little less to do with the product and more to do with the service around it. And that is no outside consultant required. Every other document management product in this list anyway, they don't do their own onboarding. Instead, they will refer you to what they call a consultant. So if you buy, brand X DMS, that company won't do the onboarding, which is to say they'll assign you to a local consultant, which is really a reseller, to do the data conversion and to train your team and to generally make sure that you guys are in the system and that it's working for you. Now, if you think about it, moving your data in and training everyone in your firm how to use the system, that's a make or break function, right? I mean, that can really set the tone for the next, several years in using your DMS. So if that goes poorly, the effects of that will carry on for a long, long time. And we've seen that firsthand, unfortunately. So with LexWorkplace, the company, Uptime Legal, does the onboarding, including data migration and training the user and post-implementation support. And we believe that has a dramatic effect on the success of the implementation. So what are the trade-offs of LexWorkplace? There are a few. The first I'll mention is that LexWorkplace may not fit solos. So the base plan for LexWorkplace is a 3-user base plan, comes with 3 users and a terabyte of storage, and it's priced appropriately for that. So if you're a one-person law firm, that might be out of reach for you, or that might just simply be more than you need. Trade-off number 2 is LexWorkplace does not currently have an open API, which means you do not have the ability to have a software developer write software that can talk directly with LexWorkplace. I think for most law firms that's a non-issue, but some law firms have in-house software developers that write custom software that talk to their various applications. So no open API currently. And the third trade-off I'll mention is that unlike most of the other products in this list, LexWorkplace does not have a reseller program or a consultant program. Again, the company, Uptime Legal, does the onboarding, and because there's no consultant program, if you're a law firm that has been using a certain consultant for a long time, and if you really, really like them to be involved in every software implementation that you do, they can certainly be involved, but they can't be a reseller. So for some law firms, that's a trade-off. Bottom line, I would say that LexWorkplace is good if you want a product that is easy to get into, easy to learn, easy to adopt, and that generally the members of your firm will have an easy time learning and getting used to using, without sacrificing robust DMS features. Next up is Worldox. Now, Worldox is a long-running DMS. It's been around since the early 90s, and today it's definitely used by a lot of law firms. Worldox is premise-based, which means you need an on-premise server to run and to host it. So let's start with advantages. I think the first big obvious advantage of Worldox is that it is certainly better than a regular on-premise file server, meaning it's better than the G drive or the S drive and better than basic files and folders, because Worldox, being a DMS, has features like document check-in and check-out, the ability to code and classify documents, the ability to create as many custom fields for documents as you like. And none of that, of course, is possible with a basic file system. So definitely an upgrade from that. I think another benefit of Worldox is it does have a really strong reseller/consultant community. So if you are the kind of law firm that wants to use a software consultant, or you have one that you like, there's definitely a lot of them out there. Now, the reseller community and the consultant community for Worldox at large, what we hear from our clients, various law firms across the country, is hit or miss. But if you're looking for a Worldox consultant, they're definitely out there, and there's definitely some really, really good ones out there. I think the third biggest advantage of Worldox is that it has some notable legal practice management software integrations. So if your law firm is looking to have both practice management software as well as document management software and you want them to work well together, Worldox has some notable integrations. Probably the most notable of which is its integration with Tabs 3 and Practice Master, both really great practice management products. So if you're already using one of those and you're looking to complement it with the DMS, Worldox might be worth a look. So what are the trade-offs? The first real big trade-off, I think, is that, as I mentioned, Worldox is not cloud-based. It's premise-based. That means it does require a server. That server is going to require maintenance, and that will be an ongoing cost. It'll be part of your total cost of ownership for using Worldox. Now, Worldox does, as of this time, offer a hosted option where they will be that server. They'll be that hosted server solution, though the latest news we've heard is that that option or that offering will be sunset pretty soon here. Another trade-off is that Worldox does not work on macOS. And to be fair, that is a trade-off for all but the last one we just covered, but it is a trade-off. The only way to run Worldox in a Mac environment or from a Mac is to either dual boot your machine or use Parallels if you're familiar. And I'll briefly mention Parallels if you're not familiar. Parallels is special software that you run on your Mac that allows you to run a full-blown Windows instance or a full-blown Windows install on your Mac. And it's kind of the catch-all solution. If you use a Mac, maybe you use a Mac just at home, but if you use a Mac but you need to run Windows software on it, people generally, and I'm certainly generalizing here, but people generally don't like it because it eats up a lot of resources on your computer and it requires switching back and forth between your Mac OS and your Windows OS to use different software. And the third trade-off, and I'm going to disclaim right now, this one is super subjective, right? But by and large, I would say that Worldox has a fairly dated interface and a pretty unintuitive interface. Looks aren't everything, right? But to the degree that looks matter when it comes to software, Worldox has a dated look. And I would argue its interface is at times confusing. It was made in the 90s, and I think it looks it, right? And the biggest problem with that is that it can be difficult to adopt within your firm if you're rolling out a new DMS to a law firm of many people, or just as you hire new people into your firm, training people on software that isn't just intuitive is always a challenge and an ongoing one. So that's Worldox. On a closing note, as of the recording of this video, Worldox has pretty recently been acquired by NetDocuments, which is another document management company. In fact, we'll cover their product next. And NetDocuments has communicated to all Worldox users that Worldox users should switch to NetDocuments. So that has led some people to speculate that Worldox as a product may not be around for a whole lot longer. Now, that is all speculation, but we've certainly heard that from more than one source. So if you're looking for a brand new document management system, I think it's fair to say that Worldox's future is uncertain. Which brings us to NetDocuments. Now, NetDocuments was, to its credit, really the first cloud-based document management system, or certainly the first mainstream cloud-based DMS. Today, NetDocuments is used by many different industries. It's certainly used by law firms. We also see it used by and made for accounting, financial services, as well as the manufacturing industry. So let's start with advantages. The first obvious advantage of NetDocuments is that it is cloud-based, which means no servers to maintain, minimal IT headaches. Definitely an advantage. I think the next advantage for NetDocuments is that it is certainly better than simple cloud storage solutions or basic cloud storage solutions. So what I mean is, if you're a law firm that is using Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive or one of those products and you're looking for something more sophisticated, NetDocuments would certainly fit that bill. It has the cloud-based factor that you probably like and are looking for with some added features for sure. And the third advantage of NetDocuments that I'll mention is that it also has some notable integrations with various practice management products, such as including both premise-based practice management products and cloud-based practice management products, including, again, tabs 3 in Practice Master, as well as an integration with Clio Manage. So let's talk trade-offs. So the first big trade-off is that NetDocuments does not work natively on Mac OS. And I think there's a bit of a misconception out there that if something is cloud-based, that automatically means it works just the same way on a Mac as it does on Windows, and that's not the case. Generally, that's not the case automatically, and it's specifically not the case with NetDocuments. So NetDocuments does not work natively on Mac computers. Now, I'll share a brief anecdote with you guys. I've talked to, personally, several law firms or several partners of law firms that implemented NetDocuments and were told that NetDocuments would work well on their Macs. I think in one firm's case they were all Mac, and I think in another firm's case they had PCs in the office, but a lot of users used Macs at homes. Come to find out that the way it works on a Mac is to run Parallels. I've already described how Parallels works, and I won't again, but I think it's fair to say that, running Parallels on your Mac and running a full-blown Windows instance on your Mac and then switching to that and switching out of that every time you want to use your document management product certainly is a hassle, and definitely I wouldn't describe that as working on a Mac. That is a workaround at best. So we like to use the term whether or not a product natively works on a Mac. I think that's the operative word. Unsurprisingly, I think those law firms felt very misled. Another trade-off of NetDocuments is that implementation and training is again done by a third party, by an outside consultant or reseller. So NetDocuments, like really all the other companies in this list save one, don't do their own onboardings. So again, if you buy NetDocuments, they will assign you to a local consultant or really a local reseller in your area. And similarly, I've had a chance to talk to law firms that have been through that experience, and the feedback was very mixed. Some law firms certainly said, yeah, the implementation went fine. There were no major issues. But I've heard from more than a couple law firms say that the consultant, and remember, the consultant is a third party. It's not NetDocuments proper, not the software company proper. They say that it did not go well, right? It seemed either poorly planned or poorly managed. One law firm said, Dennis, I felt like I knew more about NetDocuments than the consultant, than the expert that we were assigned to did. So certainly a potential trade-off. And finally, in terms of trade-offs, NetDocuments doesn't really have a sense of clients and matters. It doesn't have a client and matters structure because it's not just meant for law firms. It's meant for, again, many industries. In NetDocuments, the organizational structure is by what they call workspaces. And you can absolutely create a workspace per client or create a workspace per matter and sort of simulate a client or matter structure. And that's what we see law firms do that use it. But I think it's going to feel retrofit because if you're doing that, you can't give clients properties. You can't give matters properties. Things like this is the ABC matter and it's this type of case and it's assigned to these attorneys and these are the paralegals assigned to it and this is the matter's open date and close date when it's closed. So again, you can do it. You can retrofit that structure, but I think it's going to feel retrofit. So bottom line for NetDocuments, it's definitely better than an on-premise file server. It's definitely better than basic cloud storage solutions. But I think if you're a law firm, there are still better options out there. Okay, next let's talk about ProLaw. Now, ProLaw is not technically document management software. I would categorize it as practice management software with a very solid document management module as an optional piece of the software, which I'll talk about more in a second. ProLaw is premise-based, which means you can run it on an on-premise server. It does require a server of some kind, so that you can run that in-house, or you can run it in a hosted server, such as our own Uptime practice. So let's start with advantages. So I would say the first and the biggest advantage of ProLaw is that it is really the only all-in-one solution. So again, ProLaw is practice management software really first, document management as an additional module, and it also has an optional accounting module, making it really the only single software package that can do all three, practice management, document management, and accounting in one product. So that is a strong advantage. Another advantage of ProLaw is that it integrates very well with the broader Office suite. So again, that's Word, Excel, Outlook, and more. And another advantage of ProLaw is a relatively new addition to the product, and that's what they call ProLaw Workspace. So ProLaw, the software, it does a lot. And as a trade-off to that, it is complex, which means the user interface is complex. I wouldn't say it's unintuitive, I would not say that, but it is complex, right? It's complex software. So if you or if members of your firm prefer a more streamlined, modern, simplified interface, you can implement their ProLaw Workspace option. And what that does is it gives you an alternative interface, an alternative user experience for the ProLaw software in a web browser with a dialed down, again, kind of minimalist interface. Now, it makes ProLaw look more like a modern web app, but it does not make ProLaw cloud-based, right? It's just simply another interface that you can use. And what's cool about it is that you can have different members of your firm using one versus the other. So for instance, you could have the power users within your firm use the traditional desktop application, which is more complex but more feature rich. And you can have the non-power users in your firm use the ProLaw Workspace interface and kind of get the best of both worlds. So those are advantages. Let's talk trade-offs. ProLaw is definitely not meant for solo practices. As of this recording, the base or starting package of ProLaw is a 10-user package and is priced appropriately for a 10-user plan. I would say it's considered high-end software, right? So it's really meant for mid-size and larger firms. So that's a trade-off. Another trade-off, and I really mean that, it's a trade-off, not necessarily a con, is that it requires pretty significant investment. So ProLaw is really strong software, but it is not inexpensive. It is not inexpensive to acquire. And as I mentioned earlier, being premise-based, you will need pretty powerful server infrastructure for it to run properly. So your total cost of ownership over the life cycle of using it will be not insignificant. And the third trade-off is that really what I opened with, which is to say ProLaw is not a standalone DMS product. Again, at least as of the recording of this video, the DMS component, the DMS module of ProLaw, is not available standalone. You must get it with the core practice management piece. So that is potentially a trade-off. Bottom line for ProLaw, again, it's a strong product. It's been around a long time. I would say it's a good fit for mid-size and larger law firms, especially if you're looking for that all-in-one practice management, document management, and accounting in one product. And finally, iManage Work. Now, iManage is the name of the company and Work is the name of their DMS product. So iManage Work, but a lot of people just casually refer to their DMS product as iManage. So iManage is really one of the most powerful DMS products in this list. It can handle very, very large amounts of data, documents and email and other kinds of data without slowing down, with some asterisks that I'll cover in a second. And because of that, you'll see iManage Work used by a lot of large businesses, large enterprises, and very large law firms. So let's start with advantages. So like some of the other products in this list, iManage is definitely an upgrade from your basic on-premise file server. So again, an upgrade from the G drive, and the G drive has folders in it. Because, again, iManage Work is a DMS, so it has a lot of DMS features and capabilities beyond just holding documents. Another, and possibly the biggest advantage of iManage, is its ability to hold large amounts of data, and its index engine can keep up with that. It has very powerful indexing. So what that means is every document that you save to the system, be it, say, a Word document or a PDF or even emails, iManage also has an Outlook integration. is indexed right away, and then when you run a search, you'll find what you're looking for right away. And that, from an architectural standpoint, becomes increasingly difficult as your data set grows, and I think iManage handles that really, really well. Which is a good segue and somewhat overlaps with the third advantage that I'll mention, which is performance. iManage runs really, really fast. Again, you can have tons of data and searches, and just navigating different projects or different folders or matters, for instance, runs really fast. The asterisk with that is it does require considerable server infrastructure for it to run fast. So the bigger your data set gets with iManage in general, the more powerful server infrastructure you will need. Which is a great segue into trade-offs. The first of which is what I just said. iManage really requires a pretty significant IT infrastructure to run properly. In most cases, I think in fact in every case, iManage requires multiple servers, whereas a lot of applications you'll see it needs at most one dedicated server. iManage requires multiple. The indexing engine alone needs to run on its own server. So your total cost of ownership for iManage is going to be far beyond just the cost to acquire the software itself. I've mentioned this one before in other products. If other products that I've mentioned probably or mostly require an outside consultant to implement, iManage absolutely requires not just an outside consultant, but one with specific iManage expertise. So as of the recording of this video anyway, and I suspect this won't change anytime soon, you can't even just simply buy iManage and then there you have it, now you can run with it. You must buy it through and with a reseller and a consultant. Even if you're a larger law firm, and even if you have an in-house IT department or person, and even if they're great IT people with a lot of experience, you still will need an iManage expert to implement it. You are required to purchase it through a reseller because they know that unless you're trained, you're not going to do it right. And the final trade-off I'll mention, again, like the other products in this list, is that iManage does not work on a Mac, does not work natively on a Mac. Again, if you want to use iManage from Macs, you'll have to implement Parallels or something like it. So takeaways, iManage, very strong product. I think it could be a good fit for law firms that are very large. We tend to see it in law firms of 50 people, 50 total users or more, rarely less than that. So there you have it. We've covered the core features of document management software. We've covered the highlights of the 6 leading document management products for law firms today. Now, I obviously covered these at a very high level. So if you'd like to drill down and learn more about these specific products, I recommend downloading our legal DMS comparison chart. In our chart, you can compare each of these products side by side, including features, operating system support, and onboarding process. You can get that at lexworkplace.com/DMS chart, and I'll also put a link in the description. I hope you found this video useful, especially if you're actively searching for document management products. I'm Dennis Dimka with Uptime Legal. Onward and upward.